It would appear that the Exalted One's original identity has been revealed. Yes, the mystery surrounding AEW Dynamite's cult-like faction, the Dark Order, the original creative plans have been revealed by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It has reported that AEW originally pegged Marty Scurll to be the leader of the Dark Order. The villain, yes, was set to be the Exalted One. Now, AEW will now have to figure something else out since Marty Scurll decided to stay with Ring of Honor, signing a new contract there. This is what the Observer had to say, quote, Scurll had been the first choice to be the leader of the Dark Order, and AEW for the December 18th show in Corpus Christi with the heavily criticised beatdown, there was an idea for the show to end with the Scurll reveal until Ring of Honor made Scurll such a great offer to stay, end quote. Now, as they touched on there, the villain has gone on to stay with Ring of Honor. Many assumed that the jump was a formality, when All Elite Wrestling was founded nearly 12 months ago. The idea was that the only reason that Marty Scurll wasn't part of the roster then was just because he was on a Ring of Honor contract. It was, like I said, a formality, not a case of if but when Marty Scurll would sign with All Elite Wrestling. So his re-signing with Ring of Honor has surprised many. However, it's been reported, I don't know how accurate these reports are, but it's been reported that he is making WWE/AEW money. Plus, he also got offered the role of the head booker in Ring of Honor. So he is booking the shows, he is in charge of the creative direction of not only his own character, but the entire roster there at Ring of Honor, making not only a financial positive offer to stay, but also a creative positive offer to stay there. We'll get into in a later video whether this was the right move for Marty or if it was a case of him playing it safe. We'll touch on that later. But to focus on the original story here that was reported by the Observer, that Marty Scurll was going to be the leader of the Dark Order, the Exalted One, as they're referring to him in AEW. It would make sense, considering that the Dark Order is feuding with the Elite. Someone who would have ties with the Elite could be the leader of them. How to beat your enemy is to know them so well, and that could be Marty Scurll. So that would make sense from that point of view, from a logic and storytelling perspective there. And he also has his own Villain Enterprises faction, of course, in Ring of Honor. So he's been the leader of a faction before. He's been part of a faction before with being members of the Elite in Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling. My only question would be if that had gone through. Is Marty Scurll really the leader of a cult faction? Really, is that really his character? I'm not sure how good a fit that would have been for Marty. The way that the Dark Order's been presented is almost like this quasi-religious type cult, and I'm just not sure that that's really in his wheelhouse or any characters he's done previously that sort of fits Marty Scurll. But it does show how much of a lock AEW believed he was to be, due to already having the creative made up and ongoing for Marty Scurll. So that's a fascinating insight to AEW's creative process, that they'd already started creative and storylines assuming that he was going to jump to AEW, but now it's not the case. So with that in mind, now that obviously this is professional wrestling, plans change all the time, so who is plan B for the Exalted One? Now, they haven't dropped the storyline or anything silly like that. We had a vignette this week on Dynamite where the Exalted One was off camera, talking to a member of the Dark Order, assessing targets for who could be next to be recruited by the Dark Order, by Evil Uno and Stu Grayson. So they're still persisting with this storyline. It's not a case of they're just going to drop it. I mean, how many infamous angles and storylines have been dropped because creative or plans change? So let's go into who could be the Exalted One. If you were to believe AEW, this was the plan all along, but who is plan B when it comes to being the Exalted One? First up, Luke Harper, aka Brody Lee, as he's now known on the independent scene. Well, I say on the independent scene, he hasn't done any post-WWE bookings as of yet. Of course, he had his release granted at the end of last year, but he's still got a no-compete clause. as is the case with any WWE contract release. I think there's this misconception when it comes to WWE contracts. If they're released from their contract, so WWE terminates the contract earlier than is the expiration date on the contract, usually they have a no-compete 90-day clause. I think it's roughly around 90 days, their no-compete clause usually. Whereas if it expires, if it's a case like Jon Moxley, back in May of last year or in April last year, if the contract expires, they're free to go wherever they want the next day. There is no non-compete clause there. So Luke Harper, Brody Lee, as he'll be known going forward, that was his previous name before he got to WWE, had his release granted, but his non-compete clause is in effect, and that finishes up, I believe, around March time of this year. So they could hang this out and wait until then and reveal that Brody Lee or Luke Harper, he'll probably be known as Brody Lee in AEW if he goes there, is the Exalted One in the Dark Order. Now, why would this work from a creative point of view? Well, obviously, he can reference that he's always been a follower. If anything, he was certainly part of a cult in WWE and being a member of the Wyatt family, being the first member of the Wyatt family all the way back in NXT. So he can play off that definitely in a storyline. He can play off that, oh, I was always a follower, but now I've realised that I'm a leader. I'm tired of being a follower, I'm a leader. So that would explain why he created this faction, why he created this cult known as the Dark Order, and why he's got his Creepers and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson doing his bidding and trying to recruit everyone. They can certainly play up like that. It's certainly an option, and it's certainly an option that I think would make sense. I think it would put him on a platform higher than he was on in terms of the card that he was in WWE. It certainly puts him up there, and it makes him come into the promotion hot. I mean, Luke Harper is a hell of a talent, criminally underused and underutilized in WWE without a shadow of a doubt. He just never got a shot. I didn't understand, there are all these reports of how Vince McMahon wasn't happy with, or didn't see any talent in him. I just can't believe that. He's leaned out a lot more recently than he was previously in WWE, but in terms of being a big man, you will not find a better big man in terms of work rate, the agility, taking bumps than Luke Harper. You will really struggle to find that. So for me, it feels like him going to AEW seems inevitable, but then we thought the same with Marty Scurll, didn't we? So we'll have to wait and see with that one, but I think it's certainly an option, and if it is a plan B that AEW decides to go down, I think it would be a wise option. Another option, of course, is Matt Hardy. Now, Matt Hardy is still under contract with WWE, but he's seemingly on his way out. I believe his contract expires in March. He's currently doing the favours to the younger talent whenever he has appeared on TV recently on Monday Night Raw. He's lost the likes of Buddy Murphy and he's lost to Drew McIntyre. Great talent, and to be honest, Matt Hardy at this stage in his career shouldn't be beating guys like that on television. But it would appear that he's doing the time-honoured tradition, and the tradition especially of a veteran, where he's putting over young talent as he's leaving, trying to leave the place in a better condition than when he started in the company. And I think this whole process of him returning to WWE has really been about cleansing Matt Hardy. You think about when he left WWE back in, when was it, 2010, 2011, around that period of time. He left with a huge black cloud over his head. He had serious issues, substance issues. You can go and watch the WWE 24 documentary on the WWE Network about all of Matt Hardy's DUIs, his arrests, his issues with drugs and other substances. And I think he wanted to come back, along with Jeff Hardy, to really put that right. And I think he feels like he has. It hasn't completely worked out for him in WWE. He did get to bring that Woken character across. Well, the Broken character, which they renamed as the Woken character, the Woken Matt Hardy, and it was fun for a little bit, but like with anything, if it's not created by WWE tends not to get it. So it would appear that with his contract expiring in March, he's considering his options elsewhere, he thinks he has a lot left to give. Even though he is, getting on in his career, it's a case of months and maybe a couple of years that he has left doing his best work in the ring. So he's been making noises, especially on social media and on YouTube, about free the delete and that kind of things, about being in limbo, and how his WWE run is coming to an end, and now that he feels cleansed that his run is coming to an end, and they're parting the ways a lot more amicably than before. I believe he does own the rights to the broken character, or broken Matt Hardy. When he came over to WWE initially in 2017, there was a lot of conflict between Impact Wrestling and Matt Hardy about if he could use that character. That's why initially they didn't use the broken Matt Hardy character, because they didn't have the rights to use it. That changed, and I believe he purchased them from Impact Wrestling at the end of 2017, start of 2018, hence being used on WWE TV. So he's free to do that character in AEW, as of course he owns the right to broken Matt Hardy, not woken Matt Hardy. So I believe he's free to do whatever he wants with that character. That character, I think, is more in keeping with a cult-like faction like the Dark Order than a Marty Scurll, to be honest. I think it's more in keeping with that. That character is more out there. And you have to think back to its history, its roots in Impact Wrestling. It started off as a feud with his brother Jeff, and then eventually he converted Jeff into his way of thinking, and then Jeff Hardy joined the Broken Universe. So that sort of mind manipulation, that sort of self-improvement does fit in with the Dark Order. So that could work there. That definitely could work. But then let's be honest, who's to say he would even be broken Matt Hardy in AEW? He's gone on record before saying that, broken Matt Hardy is very 2016, 2017. The characters need to evolve. Chris Jericho said this before. Characters need to evolve. Characters need to change. He's also mentioned Matt Hardy, that he has ideas for different versions of Matt Hardy, several other different versions of Matt Hardy. Perhaps we'll see a new version of Matt Hardy if he were to be the Exalted One of the Dark Order. Perhaps we'll see a new version of Matt Hardy that is this righteous, religious, cult-like leader. We've had certainly very, very contrasting characters throughout his career. We've had Matt Hardy version 1. Of course, we had the original, the OG Matt Hardy and the Hardy Boys. But we had Big Money Matt in Ring of Honor and in Impact Wrestling. Of course, we had Broken Matt, and then we had Woken Matt. So Matt Hardy is no stranger to taking his character in a completely different direction. And perhaps if he were to be revealed as the Exalted One, the leader of the Dark Order, that could be, again, this completely different direction that he wants to take his character in his career. At this stage in his career, I don't think he's afraid to take risks. And this certainly would be one, but it'd certainly be interesting. And if he wanted to take his character in that different direction and being the Exalted One, the leader of the Dark Order, he could certainly be that. Now, people are going to say, well, should someone that old, a former WWE guy, be put in a high spot in AEW? I would say yes, because we don't know if this leader of the Dark Order, the Exalted One, how often is he going to be in the ring? We don't know. That character can be anything. It can be a leader just by name, and he can just cut promos and wrestle occasionally. And when he does put the younger talent over, which I'm sure he will do, to be honest. Matt Hardy at this stage in his career, with all the injuries and how beat up he is and his age as well, he can't be in the ring every week. But he can cut promos every week, no doubt. He can cut promos, he can cut his weird promos, his weird vignettes. So that role of a leader / manager of a faction like the Dark Order could not only help get the group over, because certainly it needs it, it's hardly been ideal or smooth sailing for the Dark Order so far, but in proxy that could hopefully get over Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, and Matt Hardy could definitely do that. So I think this is a viable option. I would say that I think this is likely the plan B that they'll go for once Hardy's contract expires in March, but I think this one is very likely. Finally, another curveball that it could be the Exalted One of the Dark Order. What about Hangman Adam Page? Now, obviously, there's been a recent storyline where Adam Page removed himself from the Elite, has become to distance himself from the Elite, and perhaps this is because he wants to destroy the Elite. Now, on commentary this week, I touched on this in our AEW Dynamite review and analysis video, that Jim Ross actually called Hangman Adam Page the Dark Horse on commentary. Now, obviously, this was referring to the match, that he was the Dark Horse in the match, and obviously Hangman, cowboy shit, all that sort of fun stuff, horse element. So that moves together quite well, and I kind of like that nickname of being the Dark Horse of AEW. Perhaps that was a subtle Easter egg for a future reveal that he is the Exalted One of the Dark Order. Perhaps it was just a throwaway comment from Jim Ross, we don't know. But the seeds could be certainly planted there. We've seen a more dark, less positive, less optimistic character in Hangman Adam Page the last few weeks. It seems like he's drinking all the time. It feels like he's on a downward spiral. And perhaps this is because he's accepted the Dark Order into his life and into his career. Now, on the flip side of it, it could be that he's just on a downward spiral, which makes him ripe for the pickings to be recruited by the Dark Order. But he could definitely still be its leader. We don't know. It certainly does feel like that this is a slow heel turn for Hangman Adam Page. Eventually, he's not going to only turn on the Elite, but more specifically Kenny Omega, who he's been tag teaming with the last few weeks and has a tag team title opportunity this week. In their promo and their vignette this week, the Dark Order, when the Exalted One was off camera talking to their chief recruiter, shall we call him, they mentioned that if they wanted to recruit Hangman Adam Page, this would be the right time. But like I said, perhaps this is a red herring. Perhaps, these vignettes are airing on television, so why would they reveal their biggest secret in a vignette like that? Perhaps they're trying to throw us off the scent that Hangman Adam Page is the Exalted One after all, but they just don't want us to look that closely at him, since this would be a logical step for this slow heel turn that the character's going in. They also mentioned recruiting Kenny Omega. Now, I mentioned before, a minute ago, that perhaps Hangman Adam Page's slow heel turn was actually to turn on Kenny Omega and the Elite and reveal himself as the Exalted One. But perhaps, if he becomes the tag team champions with Kenny Omega, perhaps he's actually trying to recruit Kenny Omega in the Dark Order as his chief tag team partner. Maybe he distanced himself, he being Hangman Adam Page, from the Elite because he founded the Dark Order instead. Now, me personally, I think this is too obvious. Like I said, perhaps they may have done the Hangman Adam Page mention in the Dark Order vignette this week because they were trying to throw us off the scent. It was trying to be a red herring. But I think it's too obvious. It seems to me that this Exalted One needs to be someone that's outside of AEW coming in. It needs to be a reveal of a new addition to the roster. And if the Wrestling Observer newsletter is to be believed, that was the case initially with Marty Scurll. It was going to be an outside addition who's looking not only to infiltrate AEW, but is also looking to infiltrate the Elite and break up the Elite and take control of AEW. So, in conclusion, there's a lot of way to go with this one. Regardless of if Marty Scurll was the original option, if he was the plan A, there is certainly a plan B, C, and D that they could definitely go in. But who do you think the Exalted One is, and who do you think is AEW's plan B for this character? Let me know in the comments, and I'll speak to you again very soon.